American foreign policy in decline. Saudi Arabia has declared a price reduction on oil exports, but only for Asian and European nations, whereas for the US the export price has raised by the UAE. In July, Joe Biden made a visit to Saudi Arabia and proposed to raise oil production to ease the supply chain. However, Saudi Arabia refused to raise oil production. Critics have accused Biden for making a U-turn on his earlier stated position of making Saudi Arabia a pariah for its alleged role in the assassination of the Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. On August 15 of the last year, the US announced its withdrawal from Afghanistan. After the pullout, Biden assured that the US-trained Afghan army would fight back the Taliban. Contrarily, the Taliban quickly defeated the Afghan army and seized control of Kabul. At the airport in Kabul, people can be seen fleeing the anarchy of the nation. Additionally, Biden reaffirmed that every American will return safely. 13 American service members, however, were killed in an attack outside the Kabul airport. Key members of the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party were denouncing US President Joe Biden's hasty decision to withdraw American forces from Afghanistan as a heartbreaking betrayal in light of the Taliban's stunning military advance that it enabled. While fighting the Taliban terrorist organization for decades and promising to safeguard Afghan nationals, the US and the NATO betrayed them, leaving them behind in hell. The US action had drawn criticism from all across the world, which had an impact on its standing and reputation. The US, which consistently presents itself as the world's big brother, but tragically failed to end the hostilities between the two nations. If handled maturely, the continuing confrontation between Russia and Ukraine might be avoided. However, the US and its allies, many of which are NATO members, did nothing to put an end to the conflict. They even failed to resolve a conflict between two nations. They believed that imposing sanctions on Russia would put an end to the conflict, but by doing so, they really made the matter worse. And when it came to changing their minds about the sanctions against Russia, they did it without hesitation in order to protect their own interests. When the UN called for a vote against Russia in April 2022, only 93 countries voted in favor of the resolution. Russia, China, Cuba, North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Vietnam were among those who voted against it. India, Pakistan, Brazil, South Africa, Mexico, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, Iraq, Pakistan, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Cambodia were among the 58 notable members who did not vote. As a result, it was a major setback for US and the Western diplomacy. Even in Africa, many African nations did not side with the US. However, the Biden's administration has been dismayed that South Africa and much of the rest of the continent have not joined the US in denouncing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. At a time when South Africa and several of its neighbors have staked out neutral ground in the face of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Biden administration seeks to bring African states closer to the US. South Africa is seen as the leader of the several African nations. South Africa abstained in a UN vote to criticize Russia's behavior, and Ramaphosa has avoided any criticism of Russia and was in favor of a negotiating peace. So, in order to re-establish its standing on the African continent, the Biden administration devised the new African policy. The United States is also dealing with the shortage of staff in its embassies across the continent, which is affecting its diplomatic relations with African nations. The United States diplomacy is mostly centered on its own interest or the interests of NATO and European Union nations. On the other hand, the US uses nations outside of these blocs to secure its own interests. The world is now questioning the United States for its discriminatory and biased behavior. The New World Order is visibly emerging and challenging the position of America and the West. BRICS, SCO, and OPEC, for example, have members who are influential in the global supply chain.